Okay, good evening everybody and welcome to the Daiwa Anglo-Japanese Foundation. Right, well, this evening I'm chairing, apparently, and we're discussing a topic which is a fairly perennial one for us and for Japan, how to deal with North Korea, which can be a troublesome neighbour. And we've got an excellent panel of people to discuss that this evening, so I won't take up much more time, but I will introduce them. Maybe, I think we'll do it, shall I? No, probably it's best if I introduce all of them now, and then I won't have to keep jumping up and down later on. So our first speaker is going to be Mark Fitzpatrick, who I'm sure is well known to many of you. He's well known to us here. He's helped us with a number of this kind of event in the past. He's director of the Non-Proliferation and Disarmament Programme at IISS, the International Institute for Strategic Studies here in London. He was formerly for 26 years in the US Department of State, and he's an expert particularly on non-proliferation related issues, and he's also the editor of what I'm told is called a strategic dossier, which was published in July 2011 by IISS, called North Korean Security Challenges, so he should be right up our street for this evening. And our second speaker, here on my right, is Dr. Seung-Young Kim. He is the Korea Foundation Senior Lecturer in the School of East Asian Studies at the University of Sheffield, and is a specialist in the international history of Korea and East Asia in the 20th century. He has also worked in Japan at the University of Keio and the University of Tokyo, and has a particular interest in Japanese diplomatic history. And when he speaks, he'll be talking to us about the relations between North Korea and the other 5 countries involved in the 6-party talks. And then our third speaker, furthest away from me, is Minister Yo Osumi. He's political minister at the Japanese Embassy here in London. And he has been a career diplomat. He's been, for instance, at the International Energy Agency in Paris, but obviously covering politics now, and this is very much a political issue for Japan. So I'll leave my introduction to that and hand over to Mark to give us the sort of big picture.
Thanks very much, Jason. When you called North Korea a troublesome neighbor, I feel sorry for North Korea's neighbors. I think it's the most troublesome country in the world. A country that has broken all the rules, that adheres to none of the international norms that have developed in international community over the past decade. Norms of regarding hereditary rule, norms regarding enslavement of one's own people or of one's neighbors' citizens, norms against the production of weapons of mass destruction. As Jason said, it's the latter that's my specialty, so that's what I'll focus on in this talk. North Korea is the only nation, as everyone knows, to have tested nuclear weapons this century. It's the only nation to have pulled out of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. I think it's the only nation to have actually signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation with the intention of violating it. It's got enough plutonium for maybe up to about 10 nuclear weapons. It recently restarted the reactor that produces plutonium. It's been running fitfully, but if they get it going, it would produce 1 or 2 more weapons worth of plutonium a year. It also has a uranium enrichment program. Nobody knows too much about it other than a facility was demonstrated to a group from Stanford University 4 years ago. That facility apparently has now been doubled in size, judging from overhead imagery of the roof. That doubling of size could make it able to produce up to about 2 weapons of the highly enriched uranium variety of year, although North Korea says that the enrichment program is for production of fuel for a reactor that it's building. And then that's probably the case. It probably will produce fuel for that reactor, but I wouldn't want to live near that reactor if they ever start operating it. I think it'll be the world's most unsafe reactor. The commander of U.S. forces in Korea, General Scaparotti, recently said that North Korea probably can miniaturize a nuclear warhead to fit on its ballistic missiles, the Nodong that can hit Japan, the Scuds that can hit anywhere in South Korea. I'm not sure exactly what he based that assessment on, but it accords with my own assessment, because North Korea's been working on the issue since about the early 1980s, late 1980s, just when I first started looking intently on North Korea as the State Department North Korea desk officer. So I think it probably could miniaturize a nuclear weapon for a Nodong. What I don't think it can do, though, is get that missile to come down securely against an intended target. It's tested missiles that go up. It hasn't tested them coming down. And you need to test warhead re-entry because of the severe vibrations and heat of atmospheric re-entry. They haven't done that yet. Watch this space, though, if they were to test that. They've tested a lot of other missiles this past year. Great series of missile tests, shorter range missiles. I think they're trying to improve the accuracy and reliability of these shorter range systems. They're also developing longer range systems. What's called the KN-08, road mobile mounted missile, which if it works, it could, they say, United States analysts say that it could hit the continental United States if it works. But it's never been tested, so nobody knows if it works. I would assume that it doesn't work, but we don't know. And the point is North Korea is working on longer range systems. It's recently refurbished the Sohae launch pad so that it can launch intercontinental ballistic missiles. It's going to take several years, I think, before they could actually hit the United States with one of those, but the goal seems clear. Other weapons of mass destruction. North Korea's got the world's only ongoing chemical weapons production program, I think. I don't know for sure, but it's assumed that they have chemical weapons. And now that Syria has given its chemical weapons over to be destroyed, North Korea is the only remaining outlier in the chemical weapons field. Other asymmetric capabilities include special operations forces, the largest in the world, and cyber warfare. I used to wonder, how could a country that the citizens don't even have access to the internet develop such a good cyber warfare capability that they can even hack into Sony pictures, if in fact they were the ones that hacked Sony? Well, they put a lot of effort into it. So there's all these dangers, all these threats that North Korea presents to the world, which I went on at some length in my book. But they also present even worse dangers, I would say, to their own people. And that's well documented now, thanks to the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, who last year said that North Korea's human rights situation has no parallel anywhere in the world. And the Commission of Inquiry report that came out this year concluded that systematic, widespread, and gross human rights violations constituted crimes against humanity. I was happy that the European Union and Japan introduced a resolution in the UN General Assembly this autumn, and that it passed, calling on the Security Council to bring the case against North Korea to the Criminal Court the International Criminal Court, holding the North Korean leadership accountable. Just the latest very well-known example of the kind of cruelty in North Korea was the execution of Kim's own uncle, Jang Song-taek, a year ago. I think we all had been hoping that this Swiss-educated young man would be a reformer, would show a new face to the world and to his own people, but I just have to conclude that he's more of a Stalin than a Gorbachev. If that resolution that goes to the the Security Council will be discussing this month whether to bring a case against North Korea, recommended to the International Court of a Criminal Court. It's pretty clear China is going to block a resolution in the Security Council, but just the prospect that this would be discussed in the Security Council really got North Korea's attention. And they started talking about testing another nuclear weapon. I think that's just bombast. But probably another nuclear weapons test is in the cards anyway. I mean, if you look at the sequencing, 2006 the first test, 2009 the second test, 2012 the third test. We can all do the math, right? Next year, fourth test is in that series. I think we could probably expect it. A fourth test will improve North Korea's ability to miniaturize these warheads. it's hard to tell too much more from that, but you know, they've already got those, the size of the explosions suggests that they are working on miniaturization. As I said though, even it's the missile re-entry test that I think would be more worrisome, because then that would demonstrate an ability to actually hit a target. And if they were to test this KN-08, this road mobile ballistic missile, that would be pretty worrisome as well. Not just for its ability to hit the United States, because I mean, of course they're not going to launch a missile at the United States. That would be suicidal. But for what it would, the doubts that it would raise in the region, it would, it could raise doubts in the region about American deterrence credibility. Because if North Korea were able to hit the United States, some people would say, well, the United States wouldn't trade Los Angeles for Pyongyang, the way that de Gaulle said that the United States wouldn't trade Chicago for Paris. Well, I mean, that's I think, faulty logic anyway, because in fact deterrence has worked very well in Europe, and it's worked in Asia as well, and as I say, North Korea isn't suicidal. And the United States has preemption options. In 2006, two well-known scholars, Ashton Carter and William Perry, wrote an article saying that the United States should take preemptive action and attack the Taepodong if it looked like it was being launched. This Ashton Carter is going to be the next U.S. Secretary of Defense. Now, one of my friends talked with Bill Perry, a former Secretary of Defense, about this and said, did you really think the United States should carry out a preemptive attack and spark another Korean War? And Perry said, well, if he was in government, he wouldn't have recommended that. But being an academic, being on the outside, your job is to raise options, and that's an option that he thought was legitimate to raise. So anyway, I just wonder if Ashton Carter, might be inclined to think about that again once he's Secretary of Defense. This, the fact that it wasn't given any credence, even by the Bush administration at the time, which was seen to be hawkish, demonstrates the conundrum of dealing with North Korea. The conundrum being that the United States and its allies have tried, I think, every possible policy option vis-a-vis North Korea, save one. They've tried diplomacy in every different format. Bilateral, multilateral, two-party, three-party, four-party, eight-party. They've tried sanctions of every sort, range and variety. They've tried inducements, engagement, threats. You can criticize them for lack of consistency, but I don't think you can criticize lack of imagination. And nothing has stopped North Korea in its development of nuclear weapons program. Now, there were temporary successes. It did get stopped for a while. The 1994 agreed framework was very successful in stopping and even rolling back North Korea's development of plutonium production. That really has to be acknowledged and applauded as a diplomatic success. But it didn't last. It was reneged on, and one can point to different reasons, but the basic reason is that North Korea started working on a uranium enrichment program, which violated the spirit, if not the letter, of the agreement, and the whole thing fell apart. So only one option hasn't been tried: military. The military option has never been tried. The Ash-Carter, Bill Perry option of preemption has never been tried, and it's because it would presumably restart a Korean War. That's the fear. And it's why I think there's a false analogy is sometimes drawn. Sometimes people say, the United States attacked Iraq, it didn't have nuclear weapons. It doesn't attack North Korea because it has nuclear weapons. Well, yeah, but the reason it doesn't attack North Korea is because Seoul lies so close to the border. It's more geography that is important here. And because the difference between Iran and North Korea. I was in Japan last month, and somebody said, "Why isn't the United States firmer against North Korea? You're so tough on Iran. Why not North Korea?" And a basic reason is that in the Middle East, America's key partners want the United States to be as tough as possible. Israel and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia talks about cutting off the head of the snake. Israel talks about preemptive attacks. In Northeast Asia, America's primary partner in the peninsula, South Korea, absolutely doesn't want the United States to carry out any preemptive attack. Now, that possibility of an attack, of course, is still very real. There is a deterrent possibility, but the United States has no intention of attacking or invading North Korea, and they said so in a 2005 joint statement. Meanwhile, the U.S. policy is said to be strategic patience. That's not the official word. It was a word that was used by a phrase used by Stephen Bosworth in 2009. I think he said it offhandedly after he'd been to Pyongyang, couldn't meet Kim Jong Un, the leader at the time, didn't get much value for going there, and said, you know, we ought to maybe try strategic patience. Actually, the official line is that the strategy is not to succumb to impatience. You know, Americans are kind of impatient people, and especially diplomats. We're in charge of something for a limited period of time. We've got to fix it while we're in charge. But that impatience is something that the U.S. policy is not to succumb to. And they did try something in 2012, Leap Day, a deal under which North Korea agreed on a moratorium on tests of nuclear weapons and long-range missile launches. But the United States got badly burned because 6 weeks later, North Korea launched a missile, a space launch, but it had all the trappings of a ballistic missile. There's a lot of interplay between those two kinds of systems. So the United States now says not going to enter into diplomatic talks unless North Korea demonstrates a commitment to denuclearization, which was the purpose of the six-party talks. A North Korean diplomat told me last year that, well, if that's America's attitude, six-party talks are dead. Because North Korea is not going to demonstrate any commitment to denuclearization. Its words and actions signal just the opposite. Well, so six-party talks may well be dead, but I don't think that means diplomacy has to be dead. Engagement with North Korea shouldn't be over. We collectively should continue to try to talk. Talking is basically cost-free. It's not a benefit that you confer on the other side. And you know, it's so telling that the only foreigner known to have met with Kim Jong Un and knows the name of his wife and all is one of the most oddest people on earth. You know, Dennis Rodman. That's our emissary to North Korea. We should be able to try to find somebody better than that. Now, I don't think talking is going to persuade North Korea to give up its nuclear weapons. I used to think that some degree of economic assistance or diplomatic recognition, something would persuade them. But I no longer think that. It's pretty well enshrined in their constitution and in all of their statements that nukes are there to stay. But they might agree to a moratorium like they supposedly agreed to in the Leap Day deal of 2012, a moratorium on testing. And that wouldn't be a bad thing if it stopped, because if you don't test, you can't develop better nukes. And maybe a moratorium on the enrichment program and on the plutonium program as they did in 1994, so they couldn't get more nukes. And maybe a commitment and then a demonstration of that commitment not to transfer the nukes to anybody else. This is Sig Hecker's three no's. Sig Hecker was the Stanford University professor who saw the enrichment program in 2010. Three no's. No new nukes, no better nukes, and no transfer of nukes. I think those are worthy goals to aspire to. Last year, some North Korean diplomats came to London and Paris, and they had talks with track 1.5 talks, or track 2 talks with academics, and they gave the impression that they're willing to deal, they're willing to do something. They gave the impression they're willing to go back to that Leap Day deal, minus the space launches. They really need space launches because they're so important to their economy or exploring, whatever. And sometimes I think, well, maybe that won't be such a bad deal, but it's just impossible for Obama or any U.S. president to agree to space launches now after so many years of insisting they can't be, and given all the overlap between ballistic missiles and space launches. And also, I don't think the United States has much they can give up in return. Among the most important things, they can't give up any recognition of North Korea as a nuclear-armed state. Can't imply that in any way. What they could do, what Japan, the United States, South Korea, the EU could do, is offer an improved relationship to North Korea and integration into the international community on condition of denuclearization. John Kerry, U.S. Secretary of State, said recently the United States could offer a non-aggression pact. I think the United States could repeat that statement in the 2005 joint statement of no intention to invade or attack. They could offer a process leading to a peace treaty, something North Korea has insisted they want. And above all, they could find ways to offer North Korea a way to escape its contradictions. Contradictions, I think, will otherwise spell its demise. You know, as a nation, North Korea is beset by contradictions of almost every kind. Communism, it's a crumbling ideology when market forces are taking over the economy. Corruption and an emphasis on wealth accumulation are the dominant drivers in society today. That undermines the ideological underpinnings of the state. The smuggling of Chinese radios and South Korean DVDs provides information about the outside world that also undermines the lie of North Korea being a paradise and underlines the state's control over information. The lie that the state is unified and that they're all one was shown to be a lie when Jang Song-taek was executed, and the litany of crimes against him included that he was fomenting a faction against the leader, threatening his power. The way that Kim Jong Un spends scarce economic resources on things like a ski lift and other vanity projects, a dolphinarium, are another contradiction. A contradiction in their diplomacy. I mentioned the Leap Day deal, when they agreed to something and 6 weeks later undid it. Or when 3 North Korean officials come to Incheon for the Asian Games, say they want bilateral talks, a date is agreed, and then they don't show up. Why? Because of leafleting, balloons sending leaflets over North Korea, something that's been going on for 10 years. It's nothing new. I could go on and on about the contradiction. Emphasizing trade zones, but then last year just summarily stopping the one trade zone that was working at Kaesong. U.S. policy is to sharpen North Korea's choices, to persuade it to give up nuclear weapons. Now, it's you might say it's a contradiction to say this. If you don't think that they're actually going to give up nuclear weapons, why would you sharpen the contradictions? That's not going to work. But officials can't say it, but the same pressure that sharpens the contradictions can also serve a longer-term goal, if indeed this is a goal, and they won't say it, but I'll say I think it should be a goal of hastening internal change that could lead to unification. And I say lead to unification. The goal shouldn't be regime change per se, it should be unification. Whether it comes about by a collapse of the regime or an improvement of the situation in North Korea, unification eventually with South Korea in a democratic, free enterprise, nuclear-free country, I think it's the only good solution to this long-running tragedy. It would remove the longest-running threat to the region. So I think every country in the region and outside should aspire to Korean unification, under the conditions that it's nuclear-free, something that South Korea's President has repeatedly said. So I think I've probably exceeded my 15 minutes. So let me just say the last thing. You know, when I was asked in Japan last week, why isn't the United States tougher against North Korea than it is? Why is Iran sanctioned more than North Korea? Well, one of the reasons is that North Korea doesn't have that much to sanction. They have almost no international trade, and the main international trade they have is with China, and China just doesn't want to use that leverage. In fact, one might say, how much leverage is it really? I mean, most of that trade is in China's benefit. They get the benefit of the mineral extraction from North Korea, and the North Koreans despise the Chinese for it. So it's not like they're best friends, and the Chinese can appeal to North Korean sensibilities. The feeling is reciprocal, of course. I read more and more about the way the Chinese look down on the North Koreans, but they're not going to abandon them. They just don't want to do something that could cause a collapse, that could cause trouble on their border. That's China's most important security imperative, is to protect security on their borders. So China's not going to do something that could lead to collapse. But what they could do, and I think what they really need to do, is consult the United States and South Korea on contingencies. Not just contingencies about collapse, but contingencies sparked by provocations. Provocations in the Western Sea along the northern limit line, the way in 2010 that led to the sinking of the Cheonan and the Yongpyeong Island shelling. And there's Chinese, a lot of Chinese fishing vessels are involved now in capturing crabbing in the area. So I think China really needs to understand that something could begin in the northern limit line area, starting with the North Korean provocation. And South Korea's policy response is to respond immediately and even more than the aggression. More, not just an eye for an eye, for two eyes for an eye. And you just wonder how far up that could escalate. I'm not saying that Kim Jong Un is crazy. He's not crazy, but he is unpredictable. Nobody thought that he would go missing for 40 days and 40 nights and then find out that it's only something wrong with his ankle. So I think there are real problems. It's a troublesome country, a troublesome region, and again, I feel sorry for its neighbors, and you're going to talk more about that.
Thank you very much for Ms. Oga for invitation, the Daiwa Foundation, and thank you to Jason for warm introduction. Now I teach at University of Sheffield in East Asian Studies, but before embarking on research and career training, I was briefly quite a journalist covering the same issue. So it was until only the first North Korean nuclear inspection crisis in 1993 and 1994. After that, I became doctoral student and academic. But while listening Mark's account, I found the framework has not changed very much between 20 years ago and now. My task today, asked by Shioko-san, was North Korea's relationship with its neighbors. Mark covered certain aspects of that, and Minister O will talk about Japan-North Korea relations. But I will offer rather a snapshot of the major relations at stake. As much as I can within 15 minutes. I prepared PowerPoint, but this is a map. See, North Korea is located in the real central linchpin area of Northeast Asia, right? It also shares border with Russia too. Some people call it 18 kilometers or so, but Russia also has a stake here, and historically, geographically. And having said that, I moved on to North Korea and China relations. This glamorous picture shows that occasion of Mr. Xi Jinping's visit to South Korea. You can see the flag, South Korean flag, mixed with red flag of People's Republic of China. Indeed, there are warm relationship between PRC, People's Republic of China, and Republic of Korea, South Korea. There are 2 rounds of summit meeting between Mr. Xi and the President Park, and there are obviously warm personal chemistry going on there too. There are mutual exchange visits between Seoul and Beijing, and then last month there was an APEC summit meeting, 3rd round of summit meeting, although it was a brief one. Meanwhile, there's a very cold relation between Pyongyang and Beijing. There's no summit meeting since Kim Jong Un became the supreme leader of North Korea in December 2011. And it was reported, I heard from the Council on Foreign Relations talk show, which I saw by way of high-tech media, YouTube, the Bonnie Glaser mentioning that Chinese leaders do not hesitate denouncing Kim Jong Un informally, secretly, when they meet foreign leaders. This is a very unusual thing. And however, China does not abandon, as Mark rightly pointed out, North Korea, because as a buffer, it's important, and the sudden collapse of North Korea would lead to Korean unification, unified Korea under South Korean lead, mean the sharing border with South Korea with alliance with the United States for China. So in this context, China always encourages, even today, holding 6-party talk without much precondition, although it supported UN sanctions resolution last year, March, following North Korea's 3rd round of underground nuclear test. So this is where Chinese relations are had place now, situated. North Korea-U.S. relation, Mark covered very thoroughly, broadly. I just touch on important issues. Since inauguration of Obama administration, there are so-called strategic patience going on, no dialogue in high level between United States and North Korea. There had been expectation that Democrat government, differently from George Bush Jr. administration, would be more forthcoming in engaging North Korea diplomatically, but North Korea really removed the kind of room for the kind of diplomatic engagement between U.S. and North Korea by continuing missile tests and then underground nuclear tests. There are ongoing working level meetings going on in New York and other capitals, but it has not been upgraded further. And basically, Obama administration's stance seems like that it is not ready to compensate for North Korea's bad behaviors. And more as important issue is United States is a very busy country with other burning global security concerns, Middle East, Ukraine, and other places. And when we look at examine North Korea and South Korea relations, we should look at U.S.-South Korea relation too. U.S.-South Korea relations until middle of during the earlier period, Kim Dae-jung and Roh Moo-hyun government, which lasted about 10 years, from late 1990s until the half of first decade of 21st century, was quite strained because South Korean government was very forthcoming to embrace North Korea under the slogan and the policies of sunshine engagement policy, unconditional engagement with North Korea. With that policy, President Kim Dae-jung, late President Kim Jong Un, received Nobel Peace Prize. First South and North Korean summit meeting was held, and President Roh, successor of Kim Dae-jung, also had a summit meeting with Kim Jong-il while he was still alive. But that did not suspend North Korea's pursuit of nuclear weapons. Some people say it was because Bush administration's too coercive and harsh approach that pushes North Korea to pursue nuclear weapons, but I don't buy that argument. North Korea has been more consistently pursuing its nuclear capability because it was well aware that it would be nuclear weapons that would secure their regime survival. And but here, important thing I want to point out is here, South Korea relation with China is getting closer, and South Korean government is faced with some kind of dilemma. With currently, South Korea is exporting more goods to China than towards the United States or Japan. And it's getting closer and closer. Many Chinese students are coming to South Korea, likewise South Korean students study in China. So it became a real partner. So they call it in defense terms, South Korea and China established strategic partnership relation, whereas U.S.-South Korean relation is military alliance since 1953. So oftentimes it's characterized that Korea is South Korea caught between ally and partner, where to go. China wants more and more South Korea to be somewhat more neutral, right? Rather than, especially when the United States wish to protect or cooperate with South Korea with a missile defense system, very scrutinized missile defense system that can reveal Chinese defense capability to the high-tech intelligence capability. Because of this reason, China protested a lot, and South Korea could not take its firm position because it's in between. They delay and do not agree with American requests. So this kind of dilemma-like situation might continue in the future. Because South Korea cannot neglect or decline Chinese wishes because it's so close and such an important country, politically, economically, and diplomatically. If ever North Korea collapse, then South Korea needs support of China to complete its national mission of unification. Then South Korea and North Korea, not much progress in short. President Park Geun-hye promoted so-called the trust politique, or Dresden statement or declaration in March 2014, meaning that we will embrace North Korea, taking care of North Korea's dilapidated infrastructure and providing humanitarian assistance to North Korean pregnant women and children, etc. But North Korea perceived that this is not much different from a strategy of unification through absorption. Right? The location she made this speech was not very rightly chosen because she made this speech while visiting eastern part of Germany. And North Korea felt that it was a kind of signaling that you will collapse and we will take care of you. Despite all Chinese, Korean, South Korean government diplomatic effort, which continued until last week, North Korea does not move further and they have continued criticizing this. Basically, North Korean stance is unless you return to the policy of President Kim Dae-jung or Roh Moo-hyun-dae's sunshine engagement policy with less preconditions, we will not reciprocate this, right? And then would focus on dealing with the United States, which has been decade-long North Korean strategy and diplomatic strategy dealing with South Korea, because they basically do not recognize the legitimacy of South Korean government. When there's some tangible economic benefit, and they come forward, but otherwise they tend to prefer direct negotiation with the United States, either bilaterally or within the context of six-party talk. Because within six-party talk, North Korea has plenty of opportunity to pursue some kind of bilateral talk or dialogue in a rather informal setting, reception or other places. North Korea and Japan will be discussed by Minister Ho, but if I touch on, Japan also has been keen to develop some contacts and maintain relations with North Korea. More than anything else, Korean Peninsula is so important for Japan's own security and diplomacy. Those who are aware of the history would be well aware of this. But these days, Japan has been a bit not happy with South Korea too, because South Korea and Japan relations has been quite in a kind of tumultuous relations since the final day of former President Lee Myung-bak days, because President Lee visited disputed area of Dokdo or Takeshima area, because President visit to disputed island means consolidating sovereignty on most level. Japan was quite upset about that, and moreover, South Korean side has been quite not happy with Prime Minister Abe Shinzo's firm stance about past apology issue, particularly over the issue of comfort woman called wartime brothel run by Japanese side. The Japanese government has said there is no direct evidence that Japanese government or military was involved, but South Korean side has perceived it in a broad context. It's under managed by State of Japan. So the relation is not good. Then it seems that Abe cabinet is also wishing to develop some contact with North Korea, perhaps as a way of securing leverage towards South Korea too. And more important issue is the abductee issue. There are lots of Japanese abducted people, dozens of people during the Cold War. North Korean leader Kim Jong Un in 2002 confessed that there was, but it was not clear yet. But it became a big issue in Japanese domestic political arena. And as Prime Minister and ruling party need to address this issue to respond to the wishes of domestic public opinion. Then interesting issue is North Korea and Russia. Russia under Putin presidency have tried recover its relation with North Korea. Putin's foreign policy, audience in this room would know well, wishes to be more assertive, independent Russia, different stance from Western countries, and it was demonstrated in Ukraine and earlier other cases. And North Korea is an important area in demonstrating and enhancing Russian influence and state, and very pragmatic. While maintaining good relations with South Korea, Russia have reached out Russia. And North Korea has also its need too, because North Korea in recent couple of years has been very frustrated because of Chinese cooperation in Security Council in passing sanctions resolution following its third underground nuclear test. And also America has not been responding. Then it's a typical textbook of North Korean diplomacy, which you can find in Cold War diplomacy in North Korea. When its relation with China became problematic, it leans towards Russian side. And Russia reciprocated, it agreed to invest in the renovation of the Rajin port, which is very nearby Russo-Korean border. And then also the cleared North Korea debt incurred during Cold War. Quite substantial amount of debt were cleared by Russian goodwill. And as evidence, the second strong person in North Korea, Choi Ryong-hae, who has been rumored that he was the person leading the purge of Jang Sung-taek, Kim Jong Un's uncle last year. But Choi Ryong-hae visited Moscow last month, and this is picture shaking hands with Vladimir Putin. So Russia is making its own effort for its own reasons. And summary observation is not very clear, but if I summarize rather verbally, North Korea has claimed that it has acquired deterrence capability, right? Whereas the earlier agreement for denuclearization or Geneva Agreement Framework 1994, or the denuclearization agreement with South Korea, North Korea does not care. North Korea said we have acquired nuclear capability, so don't mess with us. You may risk your cities. As Mark said, they don't have such an advanced capability yet of miniaturization technology with the re-entry capability, but North Korea claimed that and will keep working toward that goal. And North Korea, if secret talk is resumed, it may continue its earlier pattern of behavior, gain time, and then also have dialogue with the United States, and then also maybe this round on try to acquire recognition as perhaps a nuclear armed state, although other countries may not want to recognize it. And then interesting development is, according to the media report in East Asia and the United States, North Korea is working on its own SLBM, submarine launched ballistic missile. It's a very primitive stage, but it was found that it was working on launch pad, something like that, in its primitive submarines. And it has been very harshly critical of adoption of the UN General Assembly's adoption of human rights resolution against North Korean situation, which can bring its leaders to International Criminal Court, although it will be blocked by Russia and China veto power in Security Council. And so prospect of deterrence is a question. South Korea is working on its own version of deterrence mechanism using conventional military capability to preempt and deter, so-called kill chain. But there are many questions within South Korea too, whether these conventional weapons can deter North Korea's nuclear weapon in the coming medium and future, longer run, when North Korea can put greater effort for improvement of nuclear weapons and survivability. And then, so overall, this kind of situation would continue. International society, neighboring countries, neighboring major powers, South Korea have been muddling through because there is no fundamental solution. As Mark touched on, South Korean capital, Seoul City, is hostage of North Korea's artillery, because North Korean long-range artillery can hit northern part of Seoul instantly, even if they don't use a nuclear weapon. So few people want war. Not to mention South Korea, China, in real mind, Japan might not want war over the Korean Peninsula. Even United States, during Clinton administration, they assessed that there will be ultimate victory, but there will be huge cost for American soldiers, as well as millions of death in Korean side civilians. So military option, preemptive option, has been pretty much away from the table. Then the alternative, muddling through and expect some dramatic change in North Korea. Then maybe real change, the regime change because of implosion. Because Kim Jong Un looks pretty uncertain. But one last point is, in the point of 1994, when during the first North Korean nuclear inspection crisis, one rationale for the Geneva Agreement framework and continuing negotiation was that Kim Jong Il, after succeeding his power from his father Kim Il-sung, looked very unstable at the time. So they thought, as long as you can manage, muddle through this situation, North Korean regime may implode. But that lasted 20 years. And we are now here today with a much better armed with nuclear technology, North Korea today. So we can explore further during Q&A. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. The advantage of being the third speaker is that we can pre-light the first and second speaker. So I try to just be as concise as possible. But my name is Yosumi. I'm the political minister in the Embassy of Japan. So unlike them, I'm not a free man, and I can't exercise freedom of speech fully. But that's the added value for you is that I can provide with you some of the insights from the practitioner's point of view, as I'm in the government working on this issue as well. First of all, Japan, after the Second World War, had restored diplomatic relations with all neighboring countries except North Korea. We had in San Francisco peace treaty with Americans and 50-some countries. In 1951, 1956, we had joint declaration with the then former Soviet Union, and we are still negotiating the peace treaty with them because of northern territory issues. 1965, we had a treaty on basic relations with South Korea, and 1972, we had joint declaration with China. So the missing piece is Japan-North Korea relations. In 2002, when the Prime Minister Koizumi visited DPRK for the first time. And you might have heard the Pyongyang Declaration, but you never, probably very few people have read this. So I can just introduce to you some of the parts which could be a little bit more interesting. And in the paragraph 2, it says, the Japanese side regards, in spirit of humility, the facts of history that Japan caused tremendous damage and suffering to the people of Korea through its colonial rule in the past, and express deep remorse and heartfelt apology. This is more or less the same language as in the declaration when the President Kim Jong Un of South Korea visited Japan in 1998. And based on that, both sides share the recognition that providing economic cooperation after the normalization by the Japanese side to the DPRK side. So, since then, that we have had a sort of approach of comprehensive solution of all the issues, settling unfortunate past, settling the outstanding issues of concern, including these issues I'll touch on later, and the nuclear and the missile issues, and realize the normalization of the relations. So to sum up, our approach is dialogue and pressure, and action to action. In terms of the nuclear and missile issues, I think Mark already explained very well as to the state of play. I can only add that we are in the UN Security Council in 2006, and also in 2009 that we were instrumental to impose the very stringent sanctions against North Korea. On top of that, we have additionally the Japanese-only initiative based sanctions, because we see that serious threat from the North Korean missiles and possibly the nuclear warheads of Nodong and scarce and other things. In terms of the diplomatic approach, that we have bilateral talks, of course, which is going on. And we also have, especially the trilateral partnership with the United States and Korea within the context of six-party talks, as Dr. Kim already explained. In terms of the abduction issue, I want to touch a little bit on it. Somebody already used this as a note, but if you just see this a little bit more, that it's just on your chair, and you can see that these are the people, the photos of 70 people from 1970s, and these are the abductees of the 70 abductees, 5 returned, and these are people basically abducted from the shore of which faces North Korea and Korean Peninsula and Russia, Far East. And they were basically North Korean special agents came with boat. They landed and they kidnapped some and they took them by boat to go back to North Korea. That's what happened. But some were kidnapped in Europe, like number 11 or 12. 10 or 12, as you can see in the map. And also this abduction issue is not just Japan only. There are some people who are abducted from Thailand, Lebanon, and Romania as well, in addition to many South Koreans. It became clear, and if you can see that, okay, if you can see the blue were returned in 2002, and you can see in this picture how old they get. They had become at that time. Number 9, this number 6, number 7, number 9 says those who are in the picture when they're dating, like as university college students, and it is about my age. And the one person in number 3 is the girl Megumi Yokota, whose father and mother is in this photo in their young age. And you see the Prime Minister Abe and the couple standing next to Prime Minister Abe. These are the older Yokota family, Yokota parents, and father and mother of Miss Yokota. And Miss Yokota, it seems to be, I count now, that she was born in 1964, or maybe 3, but 1964 was the year for Japan, for the Olympic Games, and everyone in Japan knows. So how old she is, that she's, very getting older now. And but this is the only photo they have, because when she was kidnapped in 1977, that she was just 13 years old. So that is an issue. That is a weight in Japan about this issue. It first became clear in 1996 by the report of the former North Korean agent who fled to South Korea. He witnessed about the Japanese occupation. When Prime Minister Koizumi in 2002 visited Pyongyang, North Korean authorities said, we counted 13 at that time, 12 at that time. 88 died, 4 alive, and 1 is something that someone who didn't enter North Korea. So it was quite a shocking, and that's the time, that's a visit which Mr. Abe, at that time Deputy Cabinet Secretary, he accompanied Prime Minister Koizumi. At that time, Kim Jong Un, the father of Kim Jong Un, said, he admitted in the bilateral conversations with Prime Minister Kape, it's a very regrettable accident, a part of special agents conducted to secure Japanese teachers in their special agencies and use the identity of those who were kidnapped to get into South Korea, basically. And he also said, I came to know this fact and I punished them, and I'll express apology, and I swear I'll not do it again. That's what Kim Jong-il said directly to the Prime Minister at that time. Since then, that we have been trying to find that if these 8 people are still alive, and the family strongly believes they are alive, because there are some anecdotal evidences, but they're having inconsistent and dubious and some limited information about this. And they provide some remains, which in DNA, forensic evidence suggests this is a bone of somebody else. That's how they do things. And Prime Minister Abe, for Prime Minister Abe, this is very important. One of the most important issues in his administration. So he has been trying this. And latest is since May this year, the North Koreans finally agreed once again to establish a comprehensive and full-scale investigation on all the Japanese nationals, including abductees. And in exchange for it, that we lifted a very limited part of Japan initiative sanctions. And the heads of the committee are from the secret agency, so we think they are serious, but we are not sure yet, because there hasn't been any tangible sort of information from North Korea being provided to us. Finally, I touch on the human rights issues that I think both already mentioned. So the Japan and the European Union, along with 30 other countries, so 62 countries jointly submitted a draft resolution for the Third Committee of the United Nations. And the paragraph 7 says it acknowledges the investigative commission's finding that crime against humanity have been committed. And paragraph 8 submit this to Security Council with a referral to ICC, target sanctions against those who appear to be most responsible for this. It's quite interesting. In paragraph 3, there's a reference about abductive issues and very serious concerns at systematic abduction as well as others as a matter of state policy. And Cuban representative who was you can imagine, who was opposed to this resolution, said specifically in paragraph 3 that we are not opposed to paragraph 3. That's how things are, as a state of the play. And as I said in the beginning, that Japanese approach is dialogue and pressure and action to action. And we hope this will give you a good information as to where we stand on this issue. And overall, that as I said in the beginning, I refer back to the original point that settling unfortunate past and settling the outstanding issues of concern, including nuclear and missiles, and realize a normalization of the relations. That's what we are aiming. Thank you.